Auspicious greeting. Welcome back to the core teaching class. Last class, we talked about the Four Noble Truths, which are sufferings, causes of sufferings, cessation of sufferings, and the path to cessation of sufferings. We talk about how we have various kind of sufferings or dukkha in our life, such as birth, old age, sickness, and death, not getting what we want, and so on. And of course, we talk about the main causes for our sufferings or dukkha arise from desires or greed, anger, and ignorance. And ultimately, our goal is to reach a state which there are no more greed, anger, and ignorance, a state which we are free from attachment and all afflictions. Of course, although we can't be totally liberated from our afflictions right now, we can try to find the short-term peace in our mind as often as we can. So short peace many times. Then, of course, the next question that we want to ask is, how do we accomplish it? The Buddha told us the path to cessation of sufferings is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the topic for today's class. The Buddha told us that the Noble Eightfold Path is a path or practice that can lead us to attainment of Buddhahood. In one of the sutras, the Buddha said, "In the same way I saw an Asian path, an Asian road, traveled by the rightly self-awakened one of former times." And what is that Asian path, that Asian road, traveled by the rightly self-awakened one of the former times? Just this Noble Eightfold Path: right view, right aspiration, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. That is the Asian path, the Asian road, traveled by the rightly self-awakened one of former times. I followed that path. Following it, I came to the direct knowledge of aging and death, direct knowledge of the origination of aging and death, direct knowledge of the cessation of aging and death, direct knowledge of the path leading to the cessation of aging and death. I follow that path. So in another word, all the Buddhas in the past also practiced the Noble Eightfold Path and attained enlightenment. Therefore, we can see how important it is for us to practice this path. The image of a path is used here because these 8 factors or these 8 qualities are a mean for us to reach to our goal, and it leads us to our goal. Thus, the Noble Eightfold Path is a matter of practice rather than just a theory or knowledge. We need to walk the walk to get to our destination. We have to practice these 8 factors or qualities in our life in order for us to reach the cessation of sufferings. The next question we have is, why is this path noble? It's noble because it leads to the end of sufferings and the attainment of nirvana. Nirvana is also a term meaning a state of mind where we're free from all these afflictions like greed, anger, and ignorance. And this path is called middle path because it steers away from the 2 extreme, basically the 2 misguided attempt to cease sufferings. One extreme is the indulgence in sensual pleasures, and which we try to get rid of our dissatisfactions by satisfying ourselves with our desires. This gives us short-term happiness, but it's a happiness that doesn't last. And the second extreme is the practice of self-mortification or ascetic practice. It is an attempt to gain liberation by imposing pain to our physical body. And the error in this lies in the fact that the causes of sufferings lies in our mind, not from our body. Therefore, this practice will not lead us to liberation. Noble Eightfold Path is called the middle path because it transcends these two extremes by avoiding the error that each has. It leads to the renunciation of desires and the training of mind, which will lead to wisdom. And what, monk, is the noble truth of the path to cessation of sufferings? It is just this noble eightfold path, namely right view, right intention, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Here, you might have a question asking, here I see right intention, but in the passage before, I see right aspiration. So basically, they refer to the same thing, but it's just a difference in translation. So, but normally we would use the word right intention instead of right aspiration. These 8 factors are not steps for us to practice them in sequence, but rather we practice all of them together in our daily life. Of course, the right view is the forerunner, and it's the most important factors because it will lead us in the other factors. These 8 are sort of like the intertwining thread of a tapestry, which required the contribution of all thread for us to see the beautiful pictures. So the 8 path can be divided into 3 training. The moral discipline or moralities, they make it made up of right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. And the second group, the concentration group, which made up of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And the last group, wisdom group, they made up of right view, right intentions. These 3 groups represent the 3 stages of training. The training of moralities or moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom. The path evolved through these 3 stages. So moral discipline is the foundation for concentration, and concentration is the foundation for wisdom. And wisdom is the direct instrument for reaching liberation. Before we practice, a lot of time we easily commit a lot of unwholesome or unskillful deed through our actions and speech. Thus, we would need training of moral discipline, or rather upholding the precepts, which would help restrain our bodily actions and help prevent them from becoming the tool for afflictions, for committing unwholesome deeds. With this foundation, we start to train our mind through the training of concentration so that our mind will become concentrated and cleared of distractions. So when our mind is calm and collect, wisdom would slowly unfold and develop. When wisdom arises, we would see things as they really are, like we see it with clarity, and ultimately we would reach liberation. This is why we said moral discipline is the foundation for concentration, and concentration is the foundation for wisdom, and wisdom is a direct instrument for reaching liberation. Before we look at what each of these paths is, a question we might have then is, what is right in front of each path? So how do we define it? How do we know whether it's right or it's wrong? The word right is placed in front because it is to emphasize that such practice will lead us to liberation from sufferings. It should be in accordance to the Dharma, like the Buddha's teachings. It is wrong, of course, if these paths lead us to sufferings. But so for these Noble Eightfold Paths, basically all these 8 paths would lead us to liberation of sufferings. And all the past Buddha had practiced it and attained enlightenment from it. So now let us look at what each of these factors is. The Noble Eightfold Path starts with the right view. Right view is the forerunner of the entire path, like it's the first step in the path. It is the guide for all the other factors. It ensures that we are on the right path, and it serves as a compass for us in this path, of course. Therefore, it's important for us to know what the right views are. Our views and thoughts affect how we see and understand this world and how we think about things. Different people, of course, would have different ways of looking at life and looking at the universe. As our vantage points are different, our perspective also varies. But if we can't perceive the world with clarity, biased understanding would result, and ultimately it will lead to conflict and sufferings or afflictions. I don't know if you guys still remembered a movie called The Matrix. The movie told of a creation of AI, artificial intelligence, that leads to a race of self-aware machine that, like the machine, start to imprison mankind in a virtual reality system called the Matrix, so that people can become their power bank, basically. The story follows Neo, the main character here, and his team trying to free humanity from the system. Of course, before Neo learned about the Matrix, he thought the world he lived in is real. Thus, it came as a huge shock when he learned that he was living in a virtual realities in his mind instead of what is real. So now let us take a look at his discovery of realities.
This is the construct. It's our loading program. We can load anything from clothing to equipment, weapons, training simulations, anything we need.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to the desert of the real.
Of course, our world is not in such an extreme state. However, most of us don't really see the world as it is. If we really think about it, we, in a way, are also living in a virtual realities of what we call samsara, which means a beginningless cycle of repeated birth. Basically, a mundane existence, and of course, we died again, and we repeat in the cycle again and again. Because we don't realize the true realities of life, we create lots of sufferings for ourselves and trap ourselves in the cycle of rebirth. Only if we realize the truth and be awakened can we break through from the cycle. This reminds me of what the Buddha said in one of the sutras. He said that we're like a magician who create this world with our magic. As time passes, we start to take this world as a realities instead of our own creation. Learning Buddhism is about helping us to see the world as it is, so that we can live in ease and with peace. Of course, talking about rebirth seems very far away from us, but let us go back to our everyday life. Our view basically affects us every single moment. We see the world according to our discrimination, our prejudice, our experience, and our feelings. We might misjudge others or misjudge our situations because of them. Now, let us take a look at this video. This video shows us that wrong view and perceptions will lead to misunderstanding others and can easily lead to conflict. And of course, we might hurt others because of our misunderstanding as well. If we reflect back to our life, how often do we judge a person based on our first impressions or based on what we think or what we see or what we heard? However, we didn't realize that there might be other reasons or there might be stories behind it. Based on what we think, we might say the wrong thing to hurt others and make wrong decisions. Wrong views would give us troubles and conflicts. Some of the more serious consequences might even cost life, just like the hate crime we see in the recent time. On the other hand, positive view can change our life for the better, just like the Buddha. He wants to find a way out of suffering so that people won't need to suffer anymore. And this view and desires lead him to become the Buddha, a great teacher who guides us on the spiritual journeys toward liberation with his teachings. Right views involve correctly understand the Dharma or the Buddha's teachings. As a Buddhist, we should at least have the following right view. We need to correctly understand causes and effects. In another word, dependent origination, how all phenomena arises from causes and conditions. And of course, we'll talk about it more in the future class. We should understand that there is causes and effects, meaning we reap what we sow. If we do wholesome deed, we would have wholesome effects or consequences. On the other hand, if we do unwholesome deed, we will also have unwholesome effects. And second, we need to know that we create karma with our actions, speech, and thoughts. Karma means actions. Unwholesome karma is actions that is morally blameworthy, detrimental to our spiritual development, and conducive to sufferings for oneself and others. Wholesome karma, on the other hand, is actions that is morally commendable, helpful to spiritual growth, and productive of benefit for oneself and others. All these karmic forces will bring about corresponding wholesome and unwholesome effects depending on what we do. We have to remember that we always need to bear the consequences of what we have done. Therefore, if someone takes advantage of us, one day that person would also suffer from the corresponding consequences as well. Therefore, we don't need to be angry with the person. And we will talk more about karma in the future class as well. And third, we should know that all phenomena, like everything, are impermanence, meaning they're changing all the time, just like the changing of seasons. Right now it's spring, so you start to see the blooming of flowers. Then in summer, you see all the green leaves. And in fall, the leaves start to fall, like they turn yellow and it fall. And in winter, you only see tree branches. And then the cycle continues. And of course, it's the same for us, how we grow older every day. Having right view also means having the right understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And we can see that from one of the sutras. What now is right view? It is understanding of sufferings, understanding of the origin of sufferings, understanding of the cessation of sufferings, understanding of the way leading to the cessation of sufferings. So this is why it's important for us to understand the Four Noble Truths. Now, the next factors, right intention. For right intention, it's also known as right understanding, right thoughts, or right resolve. So these are some of the common translation that you would see in other places, but they also refer to the right intentions. The importance of this step is highlighted by the power of habit and habitual tendencies in our life. The more often a particular thought arises in the mind, the more likely it will arise again. Just like if a person is negative, then the more that the person think about how negative things are, the more negative thoughts would arise. So then whenever this person sees something or someone or a situation, negative thoughts would arise. And we might ask, okay, so how does this affect us? Our actions and speech are conditioned by our thoughts, and that wholesome and unwholesome actions would bring their respective result. Our intention would direct our actions and speech. So wrong intentions would give rise to unwholesome actions. And on the other hand, right intentions would give rise to right actions. Understanding this, we can see how right intention play an important role in this path. Of course, we need to have right view in order for us to have the right intention, and right view will lead us to cultivate these thoughts and intention that result in both happiness and a more ultimate freedom. In order for us to put this step into practice, we will need to cultivate a clear discernment of the kind of thoughts that arise in our mind. And in other words, we need to be mindful of what we think, of how we feel. So mindful of all the thoughts that arise in our mind. So now let us look at what the right intention is. And what is right resolve? So it's right intention here. Being resolved on renunciation, on freedom from ill will, on harmlessness. This is called the right resolve. So basically, right intention involves three aspects: the intention of renunciation, intention of goodwill, and intention of harmlessness. The Buddha discovered that we have two classes of thoughts. One class is the thoughts of desires, ill will, and harmfulness or cruelties. The other class is the thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. Whenever he noticed thoughts of the first kind arise in him, he understood that these thoughts will lead to harm for oneself and others, obstructing the wisdom, and leads away from nirvana. Reflecting in this way, he expelled such thoughts from his mind and brought them to an end. But whenever thoughts of the second kind arise, he understood that those thoughts are beneficial and conducive to the growth of wisdom. It aids to the attainment of nirvana. Thus, he strengthened those thoughts and brought them to completions. So, from the Buddha's teachings, we should nurture thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness, and of course, get rid of thoughts about desires, ill will, and harmfulness. Now, let us look at each of these aspects of the right intention. Okay, intention of renunciation. Greed and craving is the roots of sufferings. The Buddha told us that we need to resist the pull of desires and eventually abandon them. Renunciation here is not just about giving up things that we still inwardly cherish, but rather changing our perspective on them so that these things do not actually bind us. It is the experience of non-craving, and this experience is very liberating. We may not notice it, but our craving and desires are like chain binding us. This reminds me of a story of a war commander. There was this war commander. He was very attached to his teapot. So every single day he would drink tea from the teapot, and after he was done, he would always wipe it clean and then put it back on the shelf to make sure that it's safe and everything. So one day he was making tea with his teapot, and as he was cleaning it, he almost knocked it over on the ground. So it fall onto the ground. So as the war commander saw that his teapot was falling, he broke into cold sweat, but he was able to catch at the last moment. After he held the teapot in his hand, he started to reflect. He thought, I'm a war commander. When we're at war, I don't even break into sweat at all. But now, just seeing the falling of the teapot, it gives rise to cold sweat. Why is that? So he started to think about it, and what he realized, it's because of his attachment to the teapot. So understanding this, he made a decision and just break the teapot into pieces. So from this, we can see that attachment brings sufferings and stress for us. At the moment of realization, we would be able to let go of these attachment we have if we understand that it gives us sufferings. And all of us, we have a lot of different craving in our life. We might crave for food or alcohol or work or power or recognitions of others, wealth, or even just comfort. We might crave to have a certain mind state, like feeling content and relaxed during a meditation session. Or we might crave to feel a certain emotions, like excitement and intensities. All these cravings bind us and it leads to all kinds of afflictions and dissatisfactions. When we want to let go of them, we encounter a powerful inner resistance because our mind didn't want to let go of our hold on them. So it then, of course, begs the questions of how do we abandon these desires or craving? We can try to change our perspective on them. Normally, we think that satisfying our desires bring us happiness. We can try to look at desires from a different angle by reflecting the drawback or the dangers of sensual pleasures and of the desires. So what are the drawbacks of having all these desires? And of course, second, we can also examine the consequences of our actions in reaching our desires. For example, like if someone wants to drink alcohol and he gave in to his desires and start to drink, and slowly it become a habit and his body become very used to it, so he become an alcoholic. So what's the drawback of that? What will happen? What will happen to his family? What will happen to his work because of being an alcoholic? And slowly, when you start to examine about the negative consequences of just giving in to your desires to drink alcohol, sometimes it might help you stop from satisfying these desires, because you might think that, okay, for my family's sake, for my life, I should just stop these actions. I should not drink. And the person with the strong will and determination, he would be able to stop. So this is the same for us. So we can observe what kind of desires and craving we have, and then we can think of the consequences that might arise if we try to satisfy these desires or craving. And if we really observe, we will notice that desires will bring sufferings. When desires arise, we'll feel empty or not happy when we don't get what we want. But once we get what we want, sometimes we have worries and fear for losing them. And if we don't get what we want, after we try getting it, then we might be upset or frustrated or despairs. So we have all these afflictions just because of this desires or craving. So craving ultimately breed fear and sorrow, but renunciation gives us fearlessness and joy. When things really become too stressful, too complex, or confused, just simply remind yourself to come back to this simple experience of the moment. So I'd like to share a little bit of a passage I've read. Stephen Mitchell, in his book Parable and Portrait, clearly depict this experience of coming back to the moment in his lines about Sisyphus, a Greek mythology figure. And so now you can close your eyes and just listen to this passage. We tend to think Sisyphus as a tragic hero condemned by the god to shoulder his rock sweatily up the mountain and again up the mountain forever. The truth is, Sisyphus is in love with the rock. He cherishes every roughness and every ounce of it. He talks to it, sings to it. It has become the mysterious other. He even dreams of it as he sleeps. Life is unimaginable without it, looming always above him like a huge great moon. He doesn't realize that at any moment he is permitted to step aside, let the rock hurtle to the bottom, and go home. Tragedies is the inertial force of the mind. Now take a moment and think, how many rocks do you carry with you? Have these rocks become your mysterious others? Always remember, we can't be carefree if we let go of this attachment to them. So let go of these shackles. When we contemplate the dangers of desires and the benefit of renunciations, gradually we would be able to steer our mind away from the domination of desires. We would slowly be able to let go of our attachment, like shedding of tree leaves. The changes do not come suddenly, of course, but rather with persistent practice, it would gradually come. So slowly we would be able to let them go. But there is a process for it. And the second aspect of right intention is goodwill or loving kindness. So loving kindness is the generosities and openness of heart that simply wish well for all beings. It is not given with the expectation of getting anything in return. We can develop loving kindness through practicing Dhammara meditation, or what we call loving kindness meditation. It starts with sending loving kindness to oneself, like to ourselves, and then to the family, and then to the strangers, and ultimately to all beings in the world. If we look into our mind, we find that the basic urge of our beings is to wish to be happy and free from sufferings. Now, as soon as we see this in ourselves, we can immediately understand that all living beings also share the same basic wish. They also want to be happy. Everyone wants to be well, happy, and secure. In our daily life, it's just about being nice to others, get along with others, and help them if they need. Venerable Master Xing Yuan, the founder of Guangsan, taught us to practice the four givings. The four givings are give others confidence, give others joys, give others hope, and give others convenience. So practicing the four givings are practicing loving kindness in your daily life. And the last aspect, intention of harmlessness. So for this intention of harmlessness, it's basically a opposition to cruel, aggressive, and violent thoughts, and it is thoughts guided by compassion. Loving kindness has the characteristic of wishing happiness and welfare for others. Compassion, though, has the characteristic of wishing others to be free from sufferings. So there's a slight difference between the two. And for compassion, it required both openness and equanimities. We have to learn to let things in without drowning in difficulties and sufferings. And of course, we need to not let ourselves drowned with sorrow or overcome by sorrow. And mean that learning to simply be with the truth of things as they are while we're facing difficulties or hardship in our life. Every time we encounter pain or difficulties, open up our mind and simply be with the truth of what is present. As we practice opening to and coming close to sufferings in our lives with compassion, we then have greater strength and courage to be with the sufferings of others. So it takes time for us to nurture the sense of compassion, and we can nurture the sense of compassion for others through putting ourselves in others' shoes. We can also develop compassion with meditative exercise, and we can start off with thinking about someone whom we know and probably very close to who is going through sufferings. And we can start to contemplate about the sufferings of this loved one, and then reflect and then reflect how, if it happened to me, then how would I feel? I would want to be free from sufferings. And so slowly, because you put yourself in the other shoes, you will understand how they feel and what they're going through, and this sense of compassion would slowly arise. So you repeat this over and over again. Okay. Now, right speech. Right speech is important because speech can hurt others, create enemies, and start a war, but it can also give wisdom and heal divisions and create peace. So it has a very powerful influence in our life, and mainly because we speak a lot. Right speech is about abstaining from false speech. So it's about being truthfulness, and abstaining from slanderous speech, abstaining from harsh speech, and abstaining from idle chatter. The most basic aspect of right speech is refraining from saying things that is untrue. It is not as easy to practice as we think. There's a saying that goes, think before you speak. So if we can be mindful of the intention of the speech, then we can practice speaking truth all the time. And here, slandered speech basically are speech that is intended to create enmities or disharmony and divisions, to alien one person or group from another. And normally the motive behind such speech is generally aversion, resentment of a rival success or virtue, and the intention to tear others down by words. And abstaining from harsh speech is speech that alter in anger, intend to cause the hearer pain. So it includes abusive language or sarcasm and insult. And of course, the fourth one, abstaining from idle chatter. Idle chatter is pointless and frivolous talk, speech that serve no purpose at all, and there's no depth to it. We say things just to be heard rather than saying it for a certain meaningful purpose. Such speech communicate nothing of value, but only stir up afflictions in our mind and in others. If you have a chance, you can do an experiment. So you can, let's say you choose a day and observe silence. As you observe silence throughout the day, you might notice that you actually want to talk a lot. You have a lot of urge to talking to others, to sharing with others. So take some time, take a day off and observe silence, and then observe all these thoughts or all these speech in your mind. Right actions. Right actions means refraining from doing what is unskillful and unwholesome. So in the sutras, it said, and what is right actions? Abstaining from taking life, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct. This is called right actions. And of course, it's very easy to understand. Basically, not killing other sentient beings, like especially intentional killing, and abstaining from taking what is not given, referred to no stealing, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. It's really about being loyal to your partner. Right livelihood. Right livelihood is concerned with ensuring that we earn our living in a righteous way. So we acquired our wealth and so on by legal means, peacefully, honestly, and we don't entail harm to others. And the Buddha mentioned 5 specific kind of livelihood which would bring harms to others and are therefore to be avoided. So they are dealing in weapons, dealing in living beings, including raising animal for slaughter, as well as slave trade and prostitution. And of course, the others are in meat products. So because in meat products, you are harming others' animals. And of course, dealing in poison or dealing in intoxicant. Like all these are harmful to other sentient beings. Right effort. Right effort is also known as right diligence. It can be wholesome and unwholesome, of course. Like playing video game for the whole night, you're being diligent, but then that's wrong effort. That's not the right diligence. So what is the right effort? It basically refers to if unwholesome or unskillful thought have not arisen, then prevent them from arising. And if you already have some unwholesome thoughts, abandon them. If wholesome thoughts and skillful thoughts have not arisen, arouse them and give rise to them. And of course, last, if you already start to have a lot of wholesome and good thoughts, then just continue, maintain them, and give rise to more wholesome thoughts. So in summary, it's really about abandoning the unskillful, the unwholesome, and give rise and develop the wholesome and the skillful thoughts or actions. To understand right mindfulness, we need to first know what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is presence of mind, attentiveness or awareness. Basically, it's the quality of mind that we can describe as bare attentions. Bare attention is a detached observation of what is happening within us and around us in the present moment. So Bhikkhu Bodhi actually described it very well in one of his books. He said, in the practice of right mindfulness, the mind is trained to remain in the present, open, quiet, and alert, contemplating the present event. All judgment and interpretation have to be suspended, or if they occurred, just registered and drop. The task is simply to note whatever comes up just as it is occurring, writing the changes of event in the way a surfer rides the wave on the sea. The whole process is a way of coming back into the present, of standing in the here and now without slipping away, without getting swept away by the tides of distracting thoughts. To practice mindfulness is thus a matter not so much of doing, but undoing. It is important for us to maintain right mindfulness at all times so that we can be aware of any thoughts and feelings that arise. Only if we are aware of the thoughts and feelings that arise will we be able to have a chance to make a choice, make a decision of how we act and how we speak. For example, I'm talking to a colleague right now, and slowly we come to a difference in opinion. And I notice my anger start to arise. If I'm mindful of these feelings that arise, like I'm mindful that anger is arising, I can choose to take a deep breath before I talk again. So I'm calm enough to continue with the conversation. However, if I'm not mindful that anger arise, I'll just act upon anger and then say things that I regret and start to argue with my colleague. And of course, the consequence that follow would then be unwholesome. And so the consequences that follow based on the different choices would be different. And this depends on whether I'm mindful of my thoughts and feelings or not. Normally, we don't have this choice because we just act upon our emotions right away. This is why we said that cultivation is every moment, not just when I physically practice sitting meditation or chanting. Only right mindfulness will we be able to practice the right effort, ensuring that all our thoughts are wholesome. And only with right mindfulness will we always be able to remind ourselves to maintain this right view and right intention in our mind. Through the power and continuities of mindfulness, we then develop right concentration. When mindfulness is directed toward stabilizing the attention on a single object, it leads to deepening state of calm and tranquilities in mind, and accumulating into what we call jhana, or meditative absorption. Directing mindfulness to a precise noticings of changing object, the concentration brings increasing clarity of the three characteristics of impermanence, dissatisfactions, and selflessness. And due to the characteristic of single-mindedness, the steadiness of the mind make it possible for wisdom to arise. So again, this refers to what we have talked about before. So after concentration, concentration is the foundation for wisdom. So as we have concentration, as we're able to focus our mind single-mindedly, then this steadiness of the mind would be able to help us give rise to wisdom in our mind. So concentrating the mind needs the support of energy provided by right effort, and the stabilizing awareness provided by mindfulness. We can develop concentration through calming and contemplation and meditation. So this is why meditation is an important Buddhist practice. Remember, concentration is the foundation for insight to develop. One thing we need to also be aware is that concentration is not attained all at once, but it develops in stages. So there is a process for it, and we also need to be patience, and persistence in our practice. So you can start off with meditating 5 minutes to 10 minutes every single day before you go to bed or after you awake in the morning. As long as we persist, our mind would be able to train itself to concentrate. As the Buddha said, a bhikkhu who is concentrated understands things as they really are. So this last step of right concentration lead us back to the first step of the path, right view. However, at this point, we're having a deeper and deeper level of understanding of the Dharma. So we may not reach the goal yet, but then we're having a deeper and deeper understanding of the Dharma. And with the deepening understanding, we see that the Noble Eightfold Path come in full circle again and again. So spiraling upward toward liberation. So today we have covered the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intentions, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Once again, this path is not just a theory or knowledge, but a practice that we should all take up in our daily life. We should cultivate it every single day. I hope that after listening to this class, you can spend some time to contemplate about the Noble Eightfold Path and how you can start practicing it in your daily life. Thank you for listening to this class. I will see you next week. Take care and stay safe. 弥陀佛。